Just got to wait for Tudback to load in. I just want to see. I just want to know what these guys are going to be up to. So we've got Expansive, Robot, Scavenger, and Elite available this time. Trapping Vin, Polina, Pavlos, and Tudback are going to have to deal with a machine shop colony. Moderately priced electronics, though, so that's not too big a deal at the start of the game.
Not a lot of water.
And once again, yeah, a lot of water and a lot of not a lot of water, excuse me, and expensive resources. Once
so
again,
I'm thinking we're going to see at least one robot here. A scavenger to the direct right of the colony, a high and a medium next to some water. There are underground nukes, though. There's no iron close enough to silicon to found it as an elite, and it'd also be very bold to go as an elite in the finals.
The final round.
Yeah, that would be a bold choice to go for the current weakest faction in competitive multiplayer.
Scavenger HQ has been.
All right, so we see the
go for that scavenger.
Yeah, that was pretty early for the scavenger. I'm a bit surprised by that. I would have been waiting on it. Like, I would maybe pick up the scavenger pretty late if the expansive stuff gets taken, but Tupac decides he wants it right away. We'll see if he's punished by those nukes long term. Polina and Trat both taking some acceptable expansive locations. They've got access to that all-important iron to make steel. They both, I believe... No, it looks like one of them managed to pick up a high aluminum. Trat's actually overloading on aluminum pretty hard here. And then Pavlos, with the last found, as you predicted, we have one robot.
Robot is Pavlos' favorite faction to play.
Fair enough. And he's got access to a nice geotherm here. Now, important to note that we haven't seen much of Robot today, I don't think. You won't see it very often, but it can be pretty powerful in the right circumstance. And here, Pavlos has access to a geotherm. One of the special things robots get to do is they get extra adjacency bonuses if they put their input resources near their output resources. And as it turns out, power is an input resource for everything. So a geothermal plant can consistently provide adjacency bonuses to anything next to it. So you'll often see robots in locations where there's a geotherm kind of near this iron, and they can get a lot of those bonuses rolling in.
And expansive HQ has been upgraded.
Alright, I'm going to disappear because apparently somebody made a typo in the chat, so I'm going to fix that and I'll be right back. Sorry, a typo on the spreadsheet. It won't affect our game.
Sounds good. I will let you handle that, and I'll just continue onward. So, everybody has gotten up to HQ2 at this point. Looks like we've got some early farms out of Tudback. This is an advantage that scavengers often have. The steel supply line can take up a fairly large number of claims, so it can be a bit hard for steel users to get into the true moneymakers early in the game. Instead, when you're operating off of just carbon, you only need a couple of tiles to really get enough carbon to build all your buildings and upgrade effectively. So Tudback definitely taking advantage of that to get into farms quickly, but we can see already punished by an underground nuke landing onto his medium carbon tile. That is going to knock it all the way down to trace levels, and that's going to severely hamper his carbon income. He's going to need to consider goon squatting his remaining carbon and possibly picking up slant drilling later on to ensure that he has plenty of his basic building resource long-term this game. However, still in a good spot, up at HQ3, has a very valuable resource in hand, and has some great positioning to move forward with the rest of this game. Just going to need to look at getting up to 4 rapidly so he can get some power online.
A new claim is available.
Things are sorted out as far as the typo went on the spreadsheet, so everyone, I think, is in the correct ranking, so I can get back to this game.
Wonderful.
Extra claim auction.
Wow, Trapping Vin is actually... Yeah, extra claim auction is interesting. I bet Trat's going to let this go completely, because he had actually, for a while, disabled his other buildings that were not his geothermal plant in an effort to try and get to the point where he could make a little bit of power money faster, it seemed. He expected that power money to start coming in. And yeah, you can see that his steel mills and iron mine are actually turned off right now, as are his aluminum mines, really just focused entirely on this geothermal plant. He's trying to pay through that debt to make that power money. He's still about 5,000 away from that starting to kick in.
Technically, yeah, you're making more from that single geotherm. I mean, thanks to this explosion at the colony,
Yeah.
it's working out for Trat, and it won't harm him too much, but it's definitely a risky play this early in the game.
Yeah, it is a little bit risky for sure, but the math does pan out, right? These steel mills consume 70 power a second. If they were online, they would be making about $30. So it certainly makes him more money now to have them shut down. But I am a little surprised that right after upgrading, we're not seeing him commit to just like an additional power resource or two to really take advantage of this and maybe be able to feel okay about turning the rest of his buildings back on before too long. Rather, Tudeback is getting up a nice line of wind turbines for himself, having made it up to HQ4, and has that goon squad ready to go to defend them.
Yep.
Wow, a patent lab out of Trat already. That's an early patent lab for an expansive player in particular. Expansive players often like to upgrade as fast as they can because the primary expansive bonus is that they get an additional claim each time they upgrade. So they end up with 4 extra claims after they've hit HQ5.
He's going for superconductor, though. It makes perfect sense.
Yeah, that does make perfect sense. He really wants to drive this power home without having to commit a large number of claims. But I wonder if it's going to take too long. You can see power's price is already dropping off. This is why I wanted to see him commit to maybe additional power resources rather than try and get too fancy with his geothermal plant next to his base. But could still pan out for him. He seems to still be doing quite well.
32 seconds now to get up there. It's going to be above 100, I think. Well, now it's going way more rapidly. Maybe not.
Yeah, there were some mutiny trades back and forth. There are 2 separate lines of wind turbines working away for Pavlos and Tudeback. I'm a little surprised at that out of Pavlos in particular. Would have been pretty easy for him to make use of this geotherm this game, rather than committing to 3 tiles that are so far away from his base. And we can see that he's not actually going to make any money from them anytime soon, already in about $45,000 of debt.
Pleasure Dome auction with 2 expansives and a scavenger. This will be a pretty valuable Pleasure Dome.
Yeah, long term, this is very good. I wouldn't be too surprised to see back press for it pretty heavily. He's not really dependent on power money right now, unlike Trat, who's a little bit more reliant.
And an extra claim as a scavenger is always good to have. Polina taking it all to make sense as well.
Dangerous move for Polina, though. That's C debt already. All right. Superconductor goes Trat's way, as you were saying. And Nanotech is going to be coming out next. Let's see if anybody spots the transition with that hologram. You kind of see how things looked odd for a second, where he had a glass kiln up on its own, and then suddenly he had a reactor on its own while the others were still building. Other players can spot those details out. Those holograms are intentionally make no effort whatsoever to be perfect and give other players the opportunity, if they're paying attention, to catch what's going on.
Tudeback is HQ5, 2 HQs ahead of any other player, so far that nuke hasn't slowed them down enough yet. And going for the scavenger play's been working out.
We never saw the follow-up nukes that really you wanted to see come down. One nuke is great. It makes him take an additional tile, slows him down a hair. That's all well and good, but it's the follow-up nukes where you make him keep having to take those tiles that really make a big difference. And without that commitment to this aggression, it leaves Tudeback still in a great spot, especially because he was just making food the whole time. Food was making him good money. He was ready to go. He'll buy up a little extra carbon in the short term, and then long term, things will still pan out just fine for him. Polina in D debt once again. She seems to be spending a lot of time there today.
Optimization center is
Polina is in D debt. Alright. Tudeback just lost a lot of money. Otherwise, I was going to suggest making a play on Trat, but Tudeback's money is in optimizations right now. So that's not going to be something that he can do. That's a good long-term play, though.
Yeah, I like the idea behind the optimizations for now.
Robotics HQ has
He's
been
got
upgraded.
glass that he can optimize. He could optimize chems preemptively before other people
Engineers
really
have
get
advanced our production.
their patent labs and optimization centers rolling long term. We can see that Strat
Our methods
actually picked up
continue to
nanotech
improve.
pretty much just so that he could scrap out of his patent lab, and then did so, got the resources back, and he'll be looking to make money in the short term to really get through his upgrades and then go back into some long-term buildings. There, we finally see another nuke land on back, but it feels like at this point it might be too little too late. He is going to get aggressive against Polina.
Yeah, getting aggressive against Polina is the right choice for Tret, because if you get an early sub, you may not need to put down 2 Offworlds, you may only need 1. And with his carbon getting nuked out and no attempt at getting slant drilling, that might be what Tudbak needs to win the game.
Yeah, speaking of Offworlds, I want to point out that it's $45,000 profit per launch in Oxygen right now. That's very nice indeed. And if I'm looking at that as Tudbak, I might not go for the optimization centers. Instead, I might look to pick up a patent lab first, so I can rush into thinking machines and go pretty aggressively into that Offworld, feeling pretty secure with the move. Pick up the optimization centers on the backside at that point. All right.
Question is, if
It's
you're
interesting to me
Polina's,
that
how are you going
Tudbak
to get out of all of the debt? Well, not with that EMP you aren't.
Yeah, that's an aggressive EMP. That tells me that Tudbak really wants to commit to this buy. That's the only reason you go after EMP is on bad position as Polina, is just to drive in the knife and make sure you can pick up that purchase. But it's a weird move to me out of Tudbak because he still has these optimization centers and they're still running.
Mm-hmm.
So this is not a complete commitment to the purchase. I would like to see Tudbak decide I'm either going to invest in myself with optimization centers, or I am going to commit completely to bringing down an opponent. But with a little help from Trat being in, this purchase may still happen. We'll see if Polina can hold on.
Yeah, Pavlos wanted to delay the purchase, and then
Successful.
Trat
Trat
says,
had
you know
no
what?
interest in that whatsoever.
I want to gain the majority of this purchase, and looks like
Oh, Polina!
just
she got
defend
there.
herself, the button was there. Trat could have done it, but wasn't quick enough.
Optimization center is
Yeah, and the only thing Polina was going to be doing, spamming selling her resources and buying stock at that point. So,
Your stock is being sold.
oh, that was a close thing, but Polina is still definitely in a lot of trouble. She spent all that time, she has had to put all this money into her own stock rather than into, say, an HQ upgrade
Or debt.
or into controlling her debt. Exactly. So she is still in a huge amount of trouble this game. I would still say those were good moves because they have made the situation quite precarious for Polina, even though she survived the night.
Yeah.
Engineers have
Speaking of a night,
advanced our
that's when the next
production.
interest tick comes in. It's not going to be pretty. What is
Yeah,
that going to
things
be?
looking pretty
30 some odd interest or something like that? I don't recall
Yeah,
off the top of my
it's going
head.
to be
what-
34% interest. It's plus 2% per extra you have gone past D. It's a fairly recent addition. You can go into D debt, and then you can go past D debt, into D plus 1, D plus 2, and you take on extra interest the deeper and deeper you go into debt. Debt at that point is bad. At that point, you stop gaining debt, please.
Available to the highest bidder.
Yeah.
Let's see.
Anything after D, that's bad. C's when
Yeah,
you got to
yeah, for
worry
sure.
about it. A through B, totally fine.
It's fine.
Don't worry about it. And once you get to HQ3, start thinking about maybe going into power. That's like the standard sort of play that you do. Obviously, we saw Trat in this game do something completely different. Try to go for a expansive superconductor power rush, which is not something you see every game. In fact,
No.
this might be
something
the
you
first
don't
time I've
most
seen it,
games.
period.
No, I have seen it before. There have been other players who have tried this kind of thing. It's always interesting if they can make it work. And I would say that Trat successfully executed on it this game. I don't know if he's in the best position to take it out, but on the other hand, he's almost got his third patent secured. He did move back into that lab.
Yeah, I like
And
going
went
into
after
carbon scrubbing. Free carbon for any of your buildings, great idea, especially when chemicals is still high. The nukes keep on flying on to Tudbak,
The engineers have
And
advanced our production.
Pavlos and Trat are. Or is it just Pavlos?
It was just Pavlos there. that got aggressive against Tudbak's water. So
I'm gonna have to start wondering if Pavlos is over focusing on Tudbak and needs to start focusing on Trat now.
I don't know if that was entirely a focus on Tudbak and maybe more of a focus on just water in general. There's this idea that for Pavlos, if water starts to get very, very expensive, that can make life support very expensive. And of course, robots, well, their factories are staffed by robots, so they don't consume life support. So if life support's expensive, that's a lot of debt for everybody else that the robotic player is not going to be taking on. Or maybe even just some money out of their pockets overall. But that feels like a losing battle this game. Everybody collecting so much water this time around.
Yeah, that's why you might want to spread the love around with the nukes to both leaders and not just focus on one of them.
Yeah. Counterpoint is that Tudbak, as the scavenger, should be set up very well to get aggressive against Trat on his own, because he will have frequent access to that black market, and so maybe that was part of Pavlos' consideration there. But maybe it was just some tunnel vision. You never know. Trat being Ben with a nice cash lead, he's looking to be set up great at this point. I gotta say, I think Trat's in
You throw one at Tudbak, then you throw one at Trat, and they think the other person hit them, and you start a nuke war.
That's fair. That's fair. You can try and get the other players to target each other that way if you. Is anybody else going to build a patent lab this game, or is Trat just going to grab all of the nice patents? I'm not really sure.
All of the patents and all the optimization centers, apparently.
Well, when you're expansive and you have 4 extra claims, then why not go that
I think
route?
one of them is Need from Tudbak. There we
That's
go.
fair.
Now Pavlos is targeting Trat's water.
It's a good move on his part. You always want to nuke those.
Medium
Knocks
first.
it all the way down to Trace. Yep. Mediums are the nice thing to target initially. That's why we saw the nuke onto the medium carbon up here. Knocks it all the way down to Trace. Very significant hit at that point, whereas on a high, still good, knocks it down to a low. Just not quite as good as the medium to Trace hit. Tudbak with the first off-world market of the game. Still looks like a water pump. I don't know how convincing that's going to be for everybody, but we'll see.
There are 10k spies, so if you're not convinced, you can check it out.
That's fair. 10k spies tell me that there are a few spies positioned in this game. Looks like Polina had actually checked Tudbak's carbon out to see if those were goons, see if you could get some good nuke hits there if that became necessary. Hasn't really followed up on it much since then. Then beyond that, we see one spy positioned on top of Trat's geotherm, so it just has a good idea of what's going on in that area. We'll catch Trat out if he tries to switch that geotherm into something like the off-world market for the free power attached to it.
Polina also going for an HQ4 off-world. This is one of those
desperation
plays that you can do. Indeed that, but the off-world market's $47,000 profits every 60 seconds is hard to pass up.
Yeah. That is definitely the kind of building that you want to have on your side. Are Trat's chem refineries, which are 100% optimized and making this one's making $600 a second.
That's almost an off-world by itself.
Yeah, that's pretty nuts. He is going to be pulling in a huge amount of cash and has chosen Pavlos as the first target, which tells me he knows absolutely nothing about Tudbak's off-worlds.
Yeah, knows nothing about Tudbak's off-worlds and or thinks that Tudbak has been knocked far enough down. Now, this off-world is very well disguised as a pleasure dome. I like that spot.
Offworld shipment launched. Look at all
It takes someone paying very close attention to notice that their pleasure dome's making more money than it should be.
Yeah, pleasure domes are very nice things to conceal off-worlds, as people will almost never pick up on it, as it turns out, because it just makes a lot of sense that would be a pleasure dome. Why would that be an off-world? Whoa, almost let that geotherm go for 9,000. But people finally realized, maybe I can bid a little bit more on that. 16 seems pretty reasonable. Power is pretty low this game.
So it looks like Pavlos, who we haven't really talked about since they've just been kind of over in their corner doing well and not doing super well or interesting things. It looks like they were going to go for a geothermal borehole based on the composition of their base, but they obviously didn't get it, and what they left themselves with is a giant EMP target.
Yeah, that is how it goes for robots sometimes. We discussed that earlier, where you try and benefit too much from the adjacency bonuses, and especially when there are EMPs around, people are probably going to punish you for it with a nice juicy EMP hit here and there. Pavlos, though, doesn't really have to worry about being EMP'd for too much longer because he's pretty close to just being eliminated from the game by Trat. Only needs maybe about $30,000 more or so to take Pavlos down, and without any Offworlds on the line, he could just cancel out of some optimizations, make that happen very quickly if he'd like to. But no reason to rush it. He'll be a little bit patient, wait till the buy naturally comes to him.
Nope, there's that red button. Pavlos is taken out, and it is time for Polina and Tudback to work together if either of them wants a chance at taking the tournament.
Yeah, Tudback not in a position to take down Polina quickly. She has just managed to hold on. If he would have been able to do that, that can be a reasonable decision. You got a sub, I got a sub. Let's go head-to-head, especially when you've got the off-world lead at that point. But certainly too far away to make that happen now. You're absolutely correct that they're going to have to focus down Trat if they want to stay alive, and want their hopes of winning to stay alive in this particular situation. Whoa, Trat. That's an aggressive move. He's starting to sell out of his stock.
Yeah, so that definitely tells me that Trat's not aware of these two off-worlds at the moment. Tudback has two optimization centers that aren't doing anything, so definitely needs to do something with that.
Wow, fully optimized food though. Look at these. These are going to come online and seriously help out his economy.
Yeah, 2 sets of them.
Successful off-world shipment.
Now you can see, this is the dangerous thing about relying on oxygen as the source for your off-world profits. Oxygen can be very, very difficult to make enough of to keep profitable off-world because you don't have a good way to make as much oxygen as, say, food or fuel or water even. And so it can be hard to keep that price in check, and oxygen's price has gotten very, very high because you only make it at half rate compared to a standard resource.
Yeah, I don't know what Trat should move, Tudback should move his optimization centers into, but anything would be better than 2 buildings sitting there doing nothing.
Yes. 2 wasted claims are definitely something you cannot
remote electrolysis reactors, go for it.
They would be better. That's the sad part. Yeah, you got to keep those buildings active. You got to stay on top of those. And in particular, I mean, simply optimizing oxygen right now certainly seems like a good move to me, if that's what you're relying on for your launches.
Trat's going to be able to buy up Polina very shortly, earning a ridiculous amount of money with these optimizations, the patents, and the sub. There's that red buy button. I mean,
well, it looks like he's going to pass on it as well.
Here's the thing,
though. Why bother? Why bother?
Yeah.
I mean, just Polina's not doing anything. Polina was so afraid of you buying her for so long that she sunk all of her money into her debt and now has no money to threaten you with. So instead, just wait for the guy who is a concern, take down Tudback, and you're gonna be set to just win the rest of this game very handily. In fact, he could probably just sell out of what he's got at this point and be set up to take Polina down in just a couple minutes here.
Yeah. Yes, Trat is in an excellent position right now. It's pretty much impossible to see any future where Polina wins.
Trat could lose power. Let's never discount the options here.
Yeah,
that would be a very satisfying victory.
We might reward him the victory anyway at that point.
Maybe.
Because he's just going to sell out of all his shares and hit that buy button right now. I mean,
I want him to sell out of that 6th share. I just wanted to see that today. Yeah,
here you go.
There he goes. All right, Trat takes the victory. Very well won to him. He's a nicely unconventional headquarter level 2 geotherm into headquarter level 3 superconductor as an expansive player that we very rarely see. But a nice strong victory to him. He takes out the other top performers of the day.
I would Recommend any new players don't try and duplicate that build.
Yeah, that was
That's
oftentimes we say, hey, watch the good players, see what they do, and then copy it. Don't copy that.
Not until you have a very solid grasp of the mechanics.
Yes. That's one of those 95% of the time, the right play at HQ1 is to throw down some iron and a couple steel mills. This is that other 5%, and we won't worry about that for the time being. I would not recommend trying to replicate it.
Yeah, the exceptions to all the rules of thumb is what you play the game and kind of figure out when to do them. And the rule of thumb is there so you can get into actually playing the game.
Yeah, certainly. But that's where some of the fun in Offworld is when there's a set rule, and then here's the thing. Every single rule in Offworld is broken at some point, and in every you'll have to one of the rules. But it's finding those margins and where that has happened that the fun exists for me, at least.